Thank you for being here. I can't tell you what a thrill it is to be standing on a stage in Old Town Conyers. It's been 35 years since I performed in Old Town Conyers, and I got my start right around the corner at the Depot with the Depot Players, which was begun by my dear friend and mentor, Linda P. Wise. Yeah. And now, that was 46 years ago she began that theater, and it's still going strong today as the new Depot Players, and it takes place right here at the CRCA. So essentially, I am performing on the Depot stage, and I'm just thrilled to be here. I have to say a couple of things, a couple of thank yous, because this weekend has just been extraordinary, and I see so many wonderful faces in the audience right now, reunions and reconnections that are really special to me. And that wouldn't be possible without my producers, my friend of 40 years, Hank Wise. And my friend of 38 years, Lloyd Wilkinson. Thank you all for making this possible. There's one more person I have to thank, and that is Carl Peoples, who is another dear friend, a new friend in Birmingham, who runs Central Alabama Theater. And earlier in the year, he asked me would I create a cabaret for his cabaret series, and I said yes. And suddenly, all the Post-it notes that are all over my walls came together in a line and made the show The Adventures of HYLANDO, and I'm just thrilled to share it with you this evening. So, you guys ready?
Yeah!
Awesome, I am too. Well, it's a 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, now go, cat, go, but don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Or you can do anything but lay over my blue suede shoes. And you can knock me down, step on my face, slander my name all over the place. Do anything that you wanna do, but oh, honey, lay over my shoes and don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Or you can do anything but lay over my blue suede shoes. Now you can burn my house, steal my car, drink my liquor from an old fruit jar. Do anything that you wanna do, oh, honey, lay over my shoes and don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Oh, you can do anything but lay over my blue suede shoes. Y'all sing it with me now. A blue suede shoes. Put your hands together. A blue suede shoes. A blue suede shoes. A blue suede shoes. Oh, you can do anything but lay over my blue suede shoes. At the top, here we go. It's a 1 for the money, 2 for the show. When you get ready now, forget love and don't you step on my blue suede shoes. Let me hear ya. Oh, you can do anything but lay over my blue suede shoes. Yeah, you can do anything but lay off of my blue suede shoes. That song was written way back in 1955 by Carl Perkins. And the story goes, Carl was playing a gig, and he ended a number, and he heard a guy standing right at the edge of the stage say to his girl, "Oh, whoa, don't step on the suedes." Carl Perkins looked down, and he saw that kid had on blue suede shoes, and one of them had a big scuff mark on the top of it. Now, Carl laughed, and he thought, that kid cares more about those shoes than he does about his girl. The next day, he wrote that song, and 2 days later, he recorded it at Sun Records. And here we are, 67 years later. 67 years, and it seems like everybody knows that song. Is there anybody who doesn't know that song? That's what I thought. So, it makes me wonder, what makes a song universal or timeless? I mean, sure, it's got a great beat and you can dance to it, but there's got to be more to it than that. And I think it's about those blue suede shoes and what they represent. Now, what's the most important thing in the world to you? What would you fight for? What would you risk dying for? And for a lot of people, it seems to be the right to be an individual. to be completely self-expressed. But, as E.E. Cummings says, to be nobody but yourself in a world that is doing its best night and day to make you everybody else is to fight the hardest battle that any human being can fight and never stop fighting. Now, I'm not big on fighting, but if you try to take away my right to be me, I'll fight you all the way to the end. And that's gotten me in a bit of hot water through the years. And that's what tonight's show is all about. It's entitled The Adventures of HYLANDO. Now, you have to understand that my name is Henry Hyland Scott II. And for the first 41 years of my life, I was called Hyland. It's an Irish name. It means descendant of the wolf. It's a derivation of the name Phelan. And it's a little boy who got lost in the woods and was raised by wolves. He's kind of wild. He likes to howl at the moon. So after 41 years of howling at the moon, I decided I needed a bit of grounding. So I started going by my first name, Henry, a good German name. It means master of the house. So tonight, Henry, the master of the house, is going to tell you the adventures of HYLANDO. Our story begins. HYLANDO is the best little boy in the world. He wants to be perfect in all ways. He makes no waves. He is the teacher's pet. He is a bit of a chameleon. You want me to be what? I can be that. I can be anything you need me to be. But if you pushed him too far, he would fight. And that is exactly what happened when he was in the 2nd grade, 2 days before Christmas break. His teacher, Mrs. Wright, had assigned the children an art project. And HYLANDO had chosen to decorate the outline of a bluebird. And as he sat, cutting his light blue yarn into tiny pieces of fuzz and gluing it on his paper, in the door walks his principal, Mr. Scarlet, dressed up like Santa Claus. Ho, 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 he says. Mrs. Wright clapped her hands and said, all right, children, everyone rise and form a line at the front of the room and wait your turn to sit in Santa's lap. Well, all the kids got up enthusiastically and made a line to wait their turn to sit in Santa's lap and tell him what they wanted for Christmas. All the children, that is, except HYLANDO, who sat patiently cutting his yarn and gluing it to his page. Mrs. Wright walked over to HYLANDO's desk. HYLANDO, don't you want to tell Santa what you want for Christmas? HYLANDO said, no, ma'am, and went back to gluing. Oh, said Mrs. Wright, and back to her desk she went. About 10 minutes passed, and Mrs. Wright returned to HYLANDO's desk. HYLANDO, if you don't tell Santa Claus what you want for Christmas, you're not going to get any presents. HYLANDO said, I'm not going to get any presents anyway. We don't celebrate Christmas. And back to his gluing he went. Oh, said Mrs. Wright, and back to her desk she went. One by one, the children sat in Santa Claus's lap, and they told him what they wanted for Christmas. And when there were only 2 children left in line, Mrs. Wright returned to HYLANDO's desk. This time, she seemed upset. She pointed at Santa Claus and said, HYLANDO, get up right now and tell Santa Claus what you want for Christmas. HYLANDO put down his bottle of glue with a great sigh. He wiped his sticky little fingers on a paper towel and sheepishly made his way to the back of the line. But inside, he was upset and confused. Why was she making him do this? It didn't make any sense. When the little girl, the last little girl, thanked Santa Claus and went back to her seat, all eyes were on HYLANDO. He looked at Santa Claus, who said, come here, young fella, sit on Santa's lap and tell me what you want for Christmas. HYLANDO didn't know what to do. He just stared at the man. And then it occurred to him. He had to expose the truth. He walked over to Santa Claus, he grabbed his beard, he pulled it off his face, and he said, "See, it's just Santa, it's just Mr. Scarlet, the principal. Santa Claus isn't real." And with that, he went back to his desk and he finished his bluebird. You be you, I'll be me, and we'll get along swimmingly, 'cause you gotta dance, dance, that's true. For you and only you, that's right, you be you, I'll be me. That's the only way to be free, 'cause I gotta sing the song that is mine. That's the only way to feel fine. Now yesterday I was talking with my good friend John. He wanted me to get mad over something somebody done. He said, "If you're not angry on my behalf, then you're no friend of mine and you can kiss my..." I told him, life is just a garden, we grow what we sow. Let's sow seeds of tenderness and see how it goes. So have your anger, have your rage, and let it all pass through. I'll hold the ship of both, 'cause that's just what friends do. You be you, I'll be me, and we'll get along swimmingly, 'cause you gotta dance, dance, that's true. For you and only you, that's right, you be you, I'll be me. That's the only way to be free, 'cause I gotta sing the song that is mine. That's the only way to feel fine. Last summer on vacation with some friends of mine, they wanted me to join the plan and sharing their good time. Up at 6, out by 7, at the gate by 8. We saw jewels and crowns and china and a red velvet cape. Then to lunch, the Glyptotech dinner and a show. I asked if every day was like this, and they said, "How'd you know?" I said, "Tomorrow, you go have your fun and I'll have mine as well. We'll meet up for dinner and we'll have stories to tell. You be you, I'll be me, and we'll get along swimmingly, 'cause you gotta dance, a dance that is true. For you and only you, that's right, you be you, I'll be me. That's the only way to be free, 'cause I gotta sing the song that is mine. And that's the only way to feel fine." On the campus where I worked, there was a free speech zone. Twice a year, a man stood with a megaphone, condemning all the passers-by for their obscenities. The way to salvation, drop to their knees, repent their sins, take up the cross and walk the narrow path. Believe what he believed or suffer God's great wrath. Now most pass by, some in shame, others fought with might. Will we ever realize no one's totally right? You be you, I'll be me, and we'll get along swimmingly, 'cause you gotta dance, a dance that's true. For you and only you, that's right, you be you, I'll be me. That's the only way to be free, 'cause I gotta sing the song that is mine. And that's the only way to feel fine. Yes, and that's the only way to shine. And it's all about shining. Light under a bushel. Let your light so shine before man. Well, you know the song. Sing it with me. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine the moment. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, oh, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. That's what they teach us, right? But as we grow up, it seems to be more and more about conforming, about fitting in. Y'all, after the Santa Claus incident, things got pretty rough for old HYLANDO. the children teased him mercilessly about his weird name and about his weird religion and about his generally weird way of being in the world. So much so that HYLANDO began to paint himself smaller and smaller and smaller so that he wouldn't be noticed, so that he wouldn't be seen, so that he wouldn't be ridiculed. And that didn't change until middle school of all times. And two things happened. The first was there was this guy called Earl Hagen who came to his middle school and did a concert in the gymnasium. Now, you probably don't know who Earl Hagen is, but you do know what Earl Hagen did, because Earl Hagen whistled the theme song to the Andy Griffith Show. Do it. Hey, y'all whistle pretty good. Awesome. Well, Earl told the kids that he was the only professional whistler in the world, which meant he earned his entire living whistling. Now, HYLANDO thought this was the most incredible thing that he had ever heard. A person could earn their living whistling? Who knew? And Earl looked like he was pretty old. So, HYLANDO figured that if he practiced hard enough, he might one day become the only professional whistler in the world. It gave him a focus, something to aspire to. The second thing happened the next year when he was in the 7th grade. There was this new kid in town. He was a 6th grader, a little towhead boy called Todd Bohannon. And the principal got on the microphone and he said, "Children, this young man has volunteered to dance in front of the entire school." There was a piece of 4x8 plywood at one end of the gymnasium, and this little boy came out in white patent leather buck shoes with jingle taps on them, and he proceeded to clog his brains out. The place went crazy. Now, the next week, his math teacher, Mrs. Brown, asked the students if they wanted to create a clogging team. They called themselves the Cotton Pickin' Cloggers. And HYLANDO started to dance. He was good at it, and he practiced so hard. And when he was 15, he became the Southeastern State Champion Clogger. Wow. Well, it gave him a little bit of confidence, and it bolstered his rather fragile self-esteem. So much so that at the end of his freshman year in high school, he tried out to be the drum major of his marching band, and he got it. Now, flash forward 2 years to the summer between his junior and senior years in high school. HYLANDO has just found musical theater. He is in love with it. He was cast as a lead in his spring musical. Now, he wasn't very good, but he worked really hard. He knew every line in the show. And when it came time to perform, he would deliver his lines, and then he would mouth all the other lines. Like I said, he wasn't very good at it, but he loved it. Now, one of his new friends from the Depot Players told him about a production of Hair that was taking place in Little Five Points, that artsy, edgy area of Atlanta. Now, HYLANDO lived in Conyers with his parents, and they didn't go into the city unless it was an absolute emergency. And then it was a white-knuckle experience. So when HYLANDO came home and announced that he was driving to Little Five Points to see hair, it created quite a stir. His mother said, "People are shot and killed every day in Little Five Points. You can't go there." His father said, "Son, that's kind of a rough area of town. I would prefer it if you didn't go there." Well, HYLANDO went. Against his parents' wishes, he went. And he was never the same again. Hair is a show about a tribe of hippies who are exploring and expressing themselves all over everything and everybody. And at one point, a lady called Margaret Mead comes onto the stage and she says the most amazing things. Now, Margaret Mead, unlike the other characters in the show, is based on a real person, a cultural anthropologist who was instrumental in the women's liberation movement and the free love movement. So, Margaret Mead comes onto the stage, she is embraced by the tribe of hippies, and she delivers the following monologue. You know, kids, I wish every mom and dad would make a speech to their teenagers and say, "Kids, be free. Be whoever you are. Do whatever you want to do, just so long as you don't hurt anybody. And remember, kids, I am your friend." And then she sings a song called "My Conviction." These are the lyrics. "I would just like to say that it is my conviction that longer hair and other flamboyant affectations of appearance are nothing more than the male's emergence from his drab camouflage into the gaudy plumage which is the birthright of his sex. There is a peculiar notion that elegant plumage and fine feathers are not proper for the male, when actually that is the way things are in most species." HYLANDO's mind exploded with untapped and previously unimagined possibilities. He went back to Little Five Points 4 times to see hair. He got the soundtrack and he learned every word of it. He listened to it every day of his senior year and he sang it at the top of his lungs. His poor, poor mother. HYLANDO was no longer the best little boy in the world. Suddenly, he saw himself as a tribe member reclaiming his repressed rights of self-expression and sexuality. And his first order of business was to design his drum major uniform. It was his 3rd and final year to be drum major, and it had to be great. So he goes to the library and he researches men's fashions through the ages. And he comes up with kind of a composite. He starts with a bolero jacket, black, cut just above the navel, 2 brass buttons fastening at the waist. He adds puffy Elizabethan sleeves with a tight cuff, black with alternating red and white stripes. He adds 2 red pleats in the back that opened and closed as he lifted and lowered his arms. His pants were tight, black, featuring a white satin kick pleat beginning at the knee and belling out over his black leather riding boots. He finished the ensemble with white gloves and a black Aussie hat with a white ostrich plume encircling it. Wow. He was so proud of his creation and of his mother's execution because she made the whole thing. Yeah. And surprisingly, she seemed to like it. So the big day comes. It is the first home game of the season. It's Saturday night. It is the unveiling of the new uniform. The band is assembled on the field, awaiting the announcement. Drum major, is your corps ready for exhibition? HYLANDO marches out on the field. He crosses right over left, turns as slowly as possible, and stops, facing the audience. All eyes are on HYLANDO, waiting for his salute. And he lets them wait. And wait. And wait. And then he slams to the ground in a jazz split and gives his salute. The crowd goes crazy. The show starts. The band kills it. They had worked so hard to perfect their show. And it was a thrill for HYLANDO to stand on the podium, conducting 75 horns, blaring right at him, everyone playing with their whole heart, with their whole soul. It was such an honor to be the drum major. After the show, the band marched back into the stands, past the bad boys at the end of the bleachers. Why are there always bad boys at the end of the bleachers? Well, the drum major had to mark time while the entire band paraded past. And when the last band member passed, he would fall into line and return to the stands. So there's HYLANDO, marking time, chin held high, feeling like $1,000,000 in his brand new uniform, when he hears the bad boys catcalling and saying, "You friggin' faggot, you queerbait piece of shit faggot." HYLANDO was seething, but he was at attention. He couldn't react, so he lifted his chin higher. He pretended that he was better than they were, that their words didn't have an effect on him. But inside, those words cut so deeply, and his armor grew thicker. Finally, the last band member filed past. HYLANDO fell into line and returned to the stands. That night, when he got all home, he took off his beautiful new uniform. But it didn't look beautiful anymore. And HYLANDO didn't wear it for a number of years. Not until he was a senior in college, and he wore it to a party at an acting conservatory where people are applauded for expressing themselves. Amen. It gets better. He also learned at the conservatory that drama is created by the misguided ways that people go about trying to love and to be loved. And that the only thing a character in a play wants, well, the only thing a person in the world wants, is to love and to be loved. The next song, by the brilliant Jacques Brel, deals with this issue. It's about a man who tries on different personas, different masks, in order to get what he wants out of the world, when the only thing that he really wants is to be loved unconditionally, as he was when he was a boy, called Jackie. And if one day I should become a singer with a Spanish bum, I'd sing for women of great virtue. I'd sing to them on a guitar I borrowed from a coffee bar. Well, what you don't know doesn't hurt you. My name would be Antonio, and all my bridges I would burn. When I gave him some, they'd know I'd expect something in return. I'd have to get drunk every night to talk about virility with some old grandma who might be dressed up like a Christmas tree. And no pink elephants I'd see, though I'd be drunk as I could be. I'd sing the song they sang to me about the time they called me Jackie. If I could be for only an hour, if I could be be for an hour every day, if I could be for just one little hour, cute, 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 in a stupid ass way. And if I joined the social world, became procurer of young girls, and I would have my own bordello, my record would be #1, and I'd sell records by the ton, all sung by many other fellows. My name would then be Handsome Jack, and I'd sell boats of opium, whiskey that came from Twickenham, authentic queers and phony virgins. I'd have a bank on every finger, a finger in every country owned by me. I'd know where I wanna be. Locked up inside my opium den, surrounded by some Chinamen, I'd sing the song I sang back then, when they used to call me Jackie. If I could be for only an hour, if I could be for an hour every day, if I could be for just one little hour, cute, 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 in a stupid ass way. And tell me, wouldn't it be nice if one day in paradise I'd sing for all the ladies up there, and they would sing along with me? We'd be so happy that'd be, 'cause down below is really nowhere. My name would then be Jupiter, and I would know where I was going. I'd be all-knowing, with a beard so long and flowing. If I became deaf, dumb, and blind because I pitied all mankind and broke my heart to do what's right, I know every single night, when my angelic work was through, the angels and the devils too would sing my childhood song to me. By the time they called me Jackie, if I could be for only an hour, if I could be for an hour every day, if I could be for just one little hour, cute, 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 in a stupid ass way. So HYLANDO was about to graduate from the conservatory with a BFA in musical theater. Ta-da! He and his classmates were on their senior showcase trip, 1 week in New York City. HYLANDO had never even been to New York City, but there he was, auditioning for casting directors and agents, going to callbacks, and auditioning for the national tour of Bye Bye Birdie, starring Tommy Tune and Anne Rankin. HYLANDO had done the show the summer before at the St. Louis Muni with Tommy and Anne and most of the creative team. So when the casting director called him personally and asked him to come and audition, he was over the moon. The day of the audition came. It was a cattle call audition, HYLANDO's first. He opens the door and he walks into a hallway filled with over 100 guys, all in dance wear, warming up and stretching. The guy in front of him has his leg up over his head going. And then a parade of 30 hot, sweaty women come out of the dance room. They all look exactly alike. 5 feet tall, hair in 2 pigtails, wearing brightly colored leotards and tights, very perky, very young, even the ones that looked like they were in their mid-40s. HYLANDO pulled it together and he found the check-in table. The monitor said, "Oh, they want to see you in the audition room before the audition. Come with me." And he leads him to the audition room. And there is the choreographer from the summer. HYLANDO, big hugs. "Oh, HYLANDO, I don't need to see you dance. I know how you dance. Why don't you just come back in 2 hours when they start the singing?" "Oh, okay. See you in 2 hours." HYLANDO left. 2 hours later, he opens the same door, walks into the same hallway, sees the same guys who are now dressed up like preppy young teenagers, and they're warming up, getting ready to sing. HYLANDO goes to the check-in table. The monitor says, "Oh, they want to see you before the audition. Come with me." He goes to the audition room, and there is the musical director from the summer. "HYLANDO, big hugs. Oh, HYLANDO, I don't need to hear you sing. I know how you sing. Why don't you come back to the final callback at the Gershwin Theater at 5 o'clock. Well, HYLANDO didn't know what to do. So he said, okay, I'll see you then. And he left. And for the next 3 hours, he freaks out. 15 minutes before 5, he opens the stage door of the Gershwin Theater, and he walks in, and he walks onto the stage. HYLANDO has never even seen a Broadway show, but there he is, standing on the stage of the Gershwin Theater. It is a magical moment. But then he notices that the other performers are reviewing the dance for the dance audition, and then he realizes he doesn't know the dance for the dance audition, and he begins to panic. He starts walking fast up the aisle of the theater, into the lobby, around the lobby, up the stairs to the upper balcony, around the upper balcony, down into the balcony, where he watches the dancers on the stage, and he tries to pick up the combination from there, but he can't. So he starts walking again up the aisle into the balcony lobby, where he sees a friend from the summer production who teaches him the combination. Thank God for friends. After the dance call, the casting director comes down and he reads a list of names of all the people they would like to hear sing. HYLANDO's name is on the list. But as he looks around at the other people who are on the list, he notices that they are about a head shorter than he is, and they all look much younger than he looks. So he remembers that he has a baseball cap in his bag, and he retrieves it and places it upon his head like so. He thinks this will make him look younger. This is the big plan. So it comes HYLANDO's turn to sing. And he gets his sheet music, 3 pages, one-sided, neatly taped together, and he places them with the accompanist, points to his repeat sign, and gives a tempo without snapping. And then he walks to center stage and turns to see the Gershwin with all her lights on. He hears a voice of Gene Sachs. Hey, can you lose the hat? HYLANDO grabs the hat and hurls it into the stage right wing. His legs begin to shake as he nods to the pianist to begin his song. And then he sings the kite song from You Are a Good Man, Charlie Brown. And when he is done, he says, thank you, and he begins to make his way to stage left. Just as he reaches the wings, he hears Gene Sachs' voice say, hey, you forgot your hat! HYLANDO freezes. He turns. He sees his hat in the stage right wing. Time and space warp. Literally warp. Space stretches. And his hat goes with it. A football field away, and HYLANDO is in slow motion. Oh my God, they're looking at me. And I have to go all the way across this stage to get that stupid hat that I shouldn't have worn in the first place, but I had to because I looked too old, but it didn't work. Oh God, they're looking at me. And then he was at his hat. He picked his hat up and he looked for an exit. But there was no exit. Stage right. He turns, and it happens again. And HYLANDO begins the long day's journey to stage left. After the audition, the casting director calls all the guys to the edge of the stage. He cuts half of them, lets them go, and he says to the other half, guys, you know, we didn't see exactly what we needed to see, so we're going to have another call in 2 to 3 weeks. Well, HYLANDO had to go back to St. Louis. He was opening a show in 1 week, and it ran for 2 weeks. So there was no way that he would be able to go for the callback. casting director said, well, if you can't be here for the callback, chances are you won't be in the show. HYLANDO said thank you, and back to St. Louis he went. Later that week, he gets a phone call from his mother. His grandfather had died. It was his father's father. HYLANDO didn't have the money for a plane ticket, and his parents didn't have the money for a plane ticket. He was doing a show, he didn't have an understudy, and so if he left, they would have to cancel the show. So HYLANDO decided that he would not attend his grandfather's funeral. It was a decision that he would regret for many, many years. With his grandfather's passing, something shifted in HYLANDO. It was as if something woke up in him, if only for a moment. The desire to reconcile, to reconnect with his family. You see, HYLANDO left home when he was 18 with the intention of never going back. He felt betrayed. He felt misunderstood. He felt shamed. And so he left with the intention of making something of himself, making something of his life. He was going to follow his dreams all the way to Broadway. And that's what he was going to do. But for now, he was back in St. Louis, anxiously waiting to hear about the Bye Bye Birdie tour, because rehearsals began in 3 days, and he had heard nothing, and he had assumed the worst. Finally, he gets up the courage to call the casting director. Hi, this is HYLANDO, and I'm calling about the tour. I just wanted to call and make sure that I didn't get it. Are you kidding? Oh, no, I'm not kidding. No one has called you? No one has called me. Well, you have to be in rehearsal on Monday morning. I do? Really? Yes, you got it. And you have to be in rehearsal on Monday morning. Oh, okay. Thank you. I'll be there. HYLANDO kicks it into high gear. He sells his car for junk. He boxes up all his possessions, and he has his roommate mail them back to Georgia. He calls a friend in New York and arranges a couch to sleep on for the month of rehearsals. And he borrows money for a plane ticket. And 2 days later, HYLANDO is on a plane bound for New York City. Yeah! Hey, HYLANDO! The next 6 years were spent largely on the road with the beautiful and talented people of his ever-revolving show family. They toured from city to city, the United States, Canada, Europe. It was an amazing life with incredible people. But after several years of being on the road, 8 shows a week, 52 weeks a year, let me entertain you, HYLANDO began to long for a deeper sense of connection. When he lay down in his hotel bed at night, he felt a kind of aching in his heart, a kind of emptiness that wouldn't let him be. So he began spending his days journaling and reading. He read A Return to Love, The Road Less Traveled, The Power of Myth, Care of the Soul, Letters to a Young Poet, and the list goes on. HYLANDO was hungry for fulfillment, for contentment, and he was willing to work for it. The words of Marianne Williamson became a touchstone for HYLANDO. You might remember them from the 1994 inaugural speech by Nelson Mandela. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are meant to shine as children do. We are born born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fears, our presence automatically liberates others. HYLANDO read these words over and over and over again. Not because he knew them as a truth in his own life, but because he longed to know them as truth. His career, on the other hand, was going great. His first tour, he was in the ensemble. His second tour, he was in the ensemble, and he understudied 3 of the male leads. His third tour, he had a leading role, and he performed on Broadway. A goal that he'd given himself 5 years to make, and he made it in 4. He was actually doing it. But he knew that if he was going to go forward, he had to do 2 things. The first thing he had to do was commit every waking moment to his career, preparing to work, working, and networking, at which he felt miserably inadequate. And the second thing, he needed representation. So he sets up a meeting with a brilliant talent agent called Jim Wilhelm. And that meeting put everything into a new light. Jim looks at HYLANDO's resume and he says, all you're going to do is confuse people. You want to be a performer, an actor, a singer, and a dancer. You want to be a director. You want to be a choreographer. And you want to be a writer. All you're going to do is confuse people. Now, if you want to be successful in this business, and it is a business, I know, people go into show business because they had a life-changing experience in high school or in community theater, but this is a business. And if you want to succeed in business, you pick one thing, you be the best at it, and that's the way it works. Well, it was great advice, but to HYLANDO, it seemed like a death sentence. Pick one thing? Are you kidding? So, after a great deal of deliberation, HYLANDO decides that he's leaving the business altogether and doing something else. What he will do, he doesn't know. He's an actor. What else can he do? So, he starts writing. And for the next year of his life, he writes, and he writes, and he writes, and he lives on his savings. He calls it updating his memory banks, bringing everything into consciousness. And after a year of writing, he has reams upon reams of written material that he reads to his enthusiastic friends. But he has no money. And so he does what actors do. He goes to an audition, and within a month, he's back out on the road again. When he joins the tour, it's playing A and B cities. But as the tour limps along, it begins to play C and D cities. Those cities that roll up their sidewalks precisely at 6. Cities where there's nothing to eat and nothing to do after the show at night. Cities whose streets are virtually empty after dark, except for the homeless people that live in them. There is a great desperation in these dying cities, and it weighed heavily on HYLANDO. He made it for 14 months, saving his money and imagining leaving the business and what he would do next. It was quite a conundrum for him. One day, as he sat journaling, he received a message. He didn't know where it came from or how it happened really, but he received a message. And it was as if he were dictating instructions that he was receiving somehow. The instructions were these: get rid of everything you own, leave New York City, move to Arizona, live there for 6 months, and then you will know what to do next. Well, HYLANDO had never received instructions before, but it was a plan. And at least he had one. So he sets the wheels in motion. He sends his dad a check for $4,000, and he says, "Dad, buy me a car that'll get me from Georgia to Arizona and back." His dad was great at buying cars. And this small connection felt surprisingly good to him. The tour was grinding down, and bookings were hard to come by. So the cast was given a hiatus for the summer. HYLANDO went back to New York to prepare for the move. It was August in New York City. Oh, so hot. HYLANDO had gotten up early to beat the heat, and he was out running errands till early afternoon. He arrived home drenched in sweat. He takes off his shirt. He turns on the air conditioning unit up to rave, and he lays down on his blue flannel sheets to take a nap. A couple of hours later, the sun comes beaming in through his bedroom window. He opens his eyes to notice the hair on his right forearm glowing in the light of the sun. He never knew how beautiful hair could be. He noticed a piece of fuzz perched on one of the hairs, and he watched as it danced in the breeze of the air conditioning unit. It stood up and fell down, and stood up and fell down, and then it stood up in the shape of a tiny reindeer. A poem flashed through HYLANDO's mind. It went like this: "Hello, little reindeer, dancing on a hair. How awkward you look, balancing there. Jump off, my friend, jump off, be gone," I said as I stretched and gave a great yawn. The reindeer he heard and began to prepare for a leap. What a leap to get down from that hair. His legs wobbled as he looked down below at the blue flannel sea into which he would go. A moment of panic. His feet lost their grip, but his legs, they held on and prevented his trip. Round, round went his body, round, round the strong hair, till he righted himself and cried with despair, "Please, somebody, somebody, can you not see that I'm stranded up here, alone as can be?" He looked to his left and then to his right. All that he found, blue flannel inside. He had strayed from the path and wound up on a hair, like so many others on hairs out there. But for him it was different, for it made him recall a time and a place with no fear at all. Before he was restless, before he set out, before he was filled with the world and its doubt. A lifetime ago, maybe two, perhaps three, but a lifetime he shared with the blue flannel sea. He threw back his head and remembered the song of life and of death going on for so long. Before reindeer were reindeer, or hares became hares, tumbling over and over without any cares. He sang to the heavens, the mountains, the trees, the oceans, the deserts, his knees and his fleas. He sang from his soul. For the first time he sang, and his song through the hills and the valleys it rang. Through churchyards and front yards and side yards and back, on a creek and in a river, and into the black of a cave where the wind lay resting her head. And the song whirled around and around her great bed. She woke with a start, filled with joy and delight. Then breathed in a breath and blew with her might. For blowing is just what the wind loves to do when she hears such a song, so honest, so true. Everything danced as the wind had her way. The birds and the leaves had a party that day. Clothes that were hung in the backyard inside were chased about town by people who cried. And the wind kept on blowing. The river stood still. Some even say that it flowed up the hill. the hill to the blue flannel sea, where the reindeer stood singing, alone as can be. The song gave him courage. He decided to leap to the blue flannel sea, so wide and so deep. His feet took their leave. He flew through the air to the wind that was whirling and swirling down there. He sang as he fell, never missing a beat, saw his face in the water, but before they could meet, the wind bore him up and carried him away. His hooves clipped the surface, creating a spray. I'm flying! I'm flying! Hey world, look at me! I'm alone, but I'm flying, as free as can be. The wind heard the reindeer boasting up there. It angered her so that she growled like a bear. What does he mean? Alone? Flying free? I'm the one blowing, so what about me? The wind held her breath, crawled in bed with a grin, pulled the covers up snugly beneath her great chin. Outside it all stopped. The party was done. The birds and the leaves and the clothes had their fun. But now it was finished, and so was our friend, falling down through the sky to his untimely end. The poor little reindeer falling so fast, crying his cries, for they might be his last. It was then he remembered the song of life and of death going on for so long. He lifted his eyes to the heavens, he sang, but the sea filled his mouth and drowned his refrain. Now he was sinking past fishes and eels, past an octopus, playing catch with some seals, into the kelp and the oysters below. He found himself sitting, swaying in the tow. And that's where he stayed for months, perhaps years, till his mind stopped filling his thoughts with its fears. Fears of being different, of not fitting in, of being too smart, too tall, or too thin. Fears that had ruled his life for so long, and the lives of the others who taught him their song. But after a time of sitting alone in a world unfamiliar and far, far from home, he began to wake up to the truth that the song he remembered was the song of his youth, the song of beginnings the whole universe sings, the song that gives birth to all living things without separation, no aloneness in sight, the great truth of oneness within his birthright. And as he remembered, he looked all around at the wondrous display of life to be found. So many arrangements of shape and degree, all living together as the blue flannel sea. In wonder, in awe, he began to ascend, rising up from the untimely end, back to the surface, to the life he once knew, to his family, his friends, to me, and to you, to tell of overcoming the fear and despair, and the time he spent stranded on one tiny hair. HYLANDO wrote furiously, trying to transcribe that poem before it passed through. But then it stopped. It just stopped with the little reindeer on the bottom of the sea, swaying in the tow. It stopped. And HYLANDO would take that poem out every year, and he would try to finish it. And every year, he would fail. It would take him 20 years to get that little reindeer off the bottom of the sea and back to the surface. But for now, he was on the road to Arizona in his new car, Senorita Rita. And he was listening to a CD that his buddy Brent had given him, the best of John Prine. And one of those songs, Spanish Pipe Dreams, became his theme song. She was a level-headed dancer on the road to alcohol. I was just a soldier on my way to Montreal. Yes, she pressed her chest against me about the time that the jukebox broke. Yes, she gave me a peck on the back of my neck. These are the words she spoke. Blow up your TV. Throw away your paper. Go to the country. Build you a home. Plant a little garden. And eat a lot of peaches. And try and find Jesus on your own. Yeah, I sat there at that table and I acted real naive, 'cause I knew that topless lady had something up her sleeve. Yeah, she danced around the barroom and she did the hoochie-coo. Yeah, she sang her song all night long, telling me what to do. Blow up your TV. Throw away your paper. Go to the country. Build you a home. Plant a little garden. And eat a lot of peaches. And try and find Jesus on your own. Well, I was young and hungry and about to leave that place. Well, just as I was leaving, well, she looked me in the face. I said, you must know the answers. She said, no, but I'll give it a try. And to this very day, we've been living our way. Here is the reason why. We blew up our TV. We threw away our paper. And we went to the country. And we built us a home. We had a lot of children, and we fed them on peaches, and they all found Jesus on their own. So HYLANDO's on his way to Arizona. And he's taking his time. And on the 5th day, he arrives at the white sands of New Mexico. Mesmerized, he gets out of his car and he walks into the snow-white dunes. He's never seen anything like it. It is otherworldly. And as he watches the sun slowly sinking below the horizon line, he becomes aware of a profound sense of aloneness. No one in the world knows where he is. He doesn't have a phone. He doesn't have a computer. He's left his family and his friends. He's left his career. he is completely alone and watching the most beautiful sunset of his life. And his heart aches. That night, in his hotel room, HYLANDO prays. He hadn't prayed in many, many years, but that night, HYLANDO prayed. And he asked God to send him a sign. Let him know that he was on the right path, that he was doing the right thing. The next morning, he's driving along a 2-lane highway in New Mexico. He looks out the window and he sees a square of rainbow. There's not a cloud in the sky. It's completely empty, just blue sky and a square of rainbow. HYLANDO thinks that's impossible. That can't be. But then he remembers that in the Bible, God sends Noah a rainbow as a sign of his new covenant. HYLANDO thinks, well, maybe Noah deserves a whole rainbow, and maybe I only deserve a square. It could be my sign. But then he decides, no, it is not my sign. It is definitely not my sign. But he watches it, and it stays for a long time. And a song comes on the radio. And HYLANDO starts to sing along. If you know the words, please sing it with me. All alone at the end of the evening, let me hear you. And the bright lights have faded the blue. Oh, I was thinking about a woman who might love me. I never knew. You know I've always been a dreamer. Spend my life running round. It's so hard to change. Can't seem to settle down. But these dreams I've seen lately, they keep on turning out and turning out and turning out to stay. So put me on a highway and show me the sign. Put me on a highway, show me a sign, and take it to the limit one more time. HYLANDO starts saying, yes, yes. I asked for a sign, I got a square of rainbow, and the song confirms it. It is my sign. HYLANDO's heart bursts open with gratitude and possibility. He was doing the right thing. Everything was going to be all right. Later that afternoon, he passes through the painted desert, and he stops to get some gas. And the old man standing behind the register says, son, that car looks pretty weighed down. Where are you headed? HYLANDO said he didn't really know. He was going to start looking in Sedona. Well, what are you looking to do? HYLANDO said that he was going to learn to play the guitar, he was going to learn to meditate, and he was going to commune with God. The old man looked at HYLANDO hard and scratched his beard. And he said, well, I don't know about that God part, but there's a town called Cottonwood. You might check that out. Oh, and there's a little tiny town called Jerome. Interesting people live in Jerome. HYLANDO said, thank you. And on he went. Hey, will you say that with me? On he went. Later that afternoon, a sweet-smelling white smoke began to rise from the defroster. Luckily, he found a mechanic, and after his car was fixed, the mechanic said, look like you got a lot of stuff in there. Where you headed? HYLANDO said he didn't know. He was going to start in Sedona, and that the old guy had told him about Cottonwood and a town called Jerome. Oh, Jerome. Strange people live in Jerome. HYLANDO, strange and interesting people. That could be the place. He thanked the man, and on he went. Later that afternoon, he arrived in Sedona, but the neon signs reeked of Hollywood spirituality. So, on he went. He arrived in Cottonwood at the base of the Verde Valley. It was littered with trailer parks. So, on he went. The sun was just setting, and darkness was descending on the valley. HYLANDO noticed on the side of a mountain the twinkling lights of a little town coming into view, like Brigadoon rising in the darkness. He thought, that must be Jerome. He reached a four-way stop. There was a sign, Jerome, 4.5 miles. HYLANDO took that left, and he wound his way up that mountain road all the way to Jerome. And there he stayed for the next 6 months. And every day he practiced his guitar. And every day he meditated, looking out over the Verde Valley. Oh, and he got a dog from the local shelter, the Willoughby dog. Dogs are the great ambassadors to the world. And through Willoughby, HYLANDO met many of the people in the town, and they became friends, and they shared their stories. Most were artists or escapees from corporate America, trying to live in relative peace on the side of Mingus Mountain. There was Noel and Gloria Schwartz, ex-Broadway dancers who met doing the original production of West Side Story on Broadway. There was One-Eyed Lance, who carved art out of logs using a chainsaw. He was an ex-drug dealer gone straight. There was Gary, the gay plumber. There was another Lance, an ex-Bank of America executive. There was Cynthia and her 5 children, defectors from the Mormon church in Salt Lake City. There was Esther from Egypt, a world traveler and general all-around Earth Mother. And there was Janet, a beautiful homeless lady who would sleep on his living room floor on cold nights. Strange and interesting people. People who were very much who they were. People who were doing their best to love and to be loved. They were great teachers, all of them. And his greatest teacher was his new friend, the Willoughby dog. As the 6 months came to an end, HYLANDO was sitting in meditation with his eyes closed, and he had a vision. He had never had a vision before, but he had a vision. And in that vision, he saw pieces of broken mirror floating in the space in front of him. And on each of the pieces were members of his family, locked in a moment that repeated itself over and over again. They were arguing, yelling. No one was listening. HYLANDO watched, and he listened. And then all at once, the pieces turned around in unison, and on the back of some of them were small black lines. He watched as the pieces began to float toward one another, to converge, until there were no cracks remaining. And the black lines formed a perfect circle. HYLANDO heard the first circle, and then it flew apart and vanished. And again, he heard the first circle. HYLANDO opened his eyes, and he thought about it for a minute. And he knew what to do next. His first circle was broken, his family circle. And he had to go back to Georgia and try to initiate healing in his family. Now, my mama knew, and she passed it along, that the family has a soul to which we all belong. Whatever we're up to, wherever we are, that soul has us held like a bug in a jar. A bug in a jar, a bug in a jar. Family soul has us held like a bug in a jar. A bug in a jar. A bug in a jar. I couldn't stop thinking about a bug in a jar. Like a lightning bug you stuck in a jar when you were 6 or 7 or maybe 11. But the question was, did the bug go to heaven after he died with no air to breathe? Your mom said poke holes in the lid, I believe, but you forgot to do it. The bug was no more, and you went crying to the lady next door. You said, ooh, lady, I caught this bug and I put him in a jar, and now he's dead, and I'm wishing on that star that he gets to go to heaven like you and me, reunite with his lightning bug family. And the lady said, it's a bug. Bugs don't have souls. Oh, so no bug heaven? It's a bug. There is no bug heaven. Oh. I walked away confused, don't you see? No bug heaven? How could it be? I have a soul, the bug has none, yet we both live under the same great sun. God sends the rain on the bug and on me. The only difference, he lives on a tree, but the tree's made of wood, and so is my house. But the tree's still alive, and my house, my house is like the jar, and the jar is a trap that kills the bug, and I'm like the bug. Oh no, I can't go home. I have to run away, live in the woods with the bugs. That's what I'll do. I ran into the woods and sat under a tree. The lightning bug family did a show for me. They didn't seem bothered by the loss of their son. Or was it mother, father, brothers? You pick one. They flew through the air, night lights bright, a winking and a blinking and a flashing their lights. But before very long, the show was done, and I was sitting all alone, not having any fun. And the noises began. The noises of the night began. Hey, this is the part where you make the noises of the night. I couldn't see a thing, and I was pretty darn scared, and my stomach started grumbling like a big hungry bear. Then I felt them crawling all over my shoe. Ants, lots of ants. What was I to do? I jumped up and down and ran out of the woods all the way to my house just as fast as I could. I slammed the door behind me, ran up to my room. I took a shower, got in bed, looked out the window at the moon. The moon. A bug in a jar. A bug in a jar. Soul has us held like a bug in a jar. Family soul. Family soul has us held like a bug in a jar. What does it mean? What does it mean? I asked the moon. What does it mean? And the moon said, there is only one soul, and everything rises and passes within it, including jars and houses and bugs and thoughts and feelings and people. All things come and go within the great soul, which remains the same. The jar is the definitions that we and others place around ourselves to make sense of the world, to protect us. When the definitions are open, there is life. When the definitions are closed, there is death. I asked the moon, does the bug have a soul? All living things are expressions of soul. Yeah, but does it have one? Not that it's aware of. Yeah, but does it have one? It only lacks self-awareness. And you have self-awareness. You get to choose. You are the bug in the jar of your own understanding, in the ultimate space of soul, the one soul, the family soul. This is what your mother was trying to tell you. Oh, I get it. I need a bigger jar. So HYLANDO made his way back to Georgia in search of a bigger jar. And when he got there, he made a new covenant with his family. And the covenant was this, that everybody was going to try at the same time to love and to be loved. And no one was going to give up on the family ever again, especially not him. Everybody agreed, and everybody did it. And it took far longer than HYLANDO could ever have imagined. But after 10 years, the family circle was complete. Everyone's light was shining brightly. And HYLANDO's heart didn't ache anymore. True that. In the book, Letters to a Young Poet, Rilke puts forth the idea that when a person is born, they have within them a sealed envelope. And in the envelope is the history of everything that came before them. All of the positive patterns and all of the negative patterns that create them. And everybody has a choice to open the envelope or to leave it shut. If you open the envelope, you have the opportunity to look at the patterns and perhaps improve upon them before passing it to the next generation. If you leave the envelope shut, the patterns within it will dictate your life. As Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Whatever the choice, right? Whatever the choice. Everybody gets a choice. And if we are to be happy, we must strive to love one another. And we must strive to allow ourselves to be loved. I want to leave you guys with one last song. And this is a song by one of my favorites, Pete Seeger. And this song, for me, puts everything into perspective. And let me put my capo on. I saw Adam leave the garden with an apple in his hand. Said, now you're out, what are you going to do? He said, plant some crops and pray for rain, maybe raise a little cane. I know you now and I'm only passing through. Passing through, passing through. Sometimes happy, sometimes blue. Glad that I ran into you. Tell people that you saw me passing through. I saw Jesus on a cross, on a hill called Calvary. Do you hate mankind for what we've done to you? He said, talk of love, not hate, things to do, it's getting late. There's so little time and I'm only passing through. Passing through, passing through. Sometimes happy, sometimes blue. Glad that I ran into you. Tell the people that you saw me passing through. Well, I shivered with George Washington one night at Valley Forge. Why do the soldiers freeze here like they do? He said men will suffer fight, even die for what is right, even though they know they're only passing through. Passing through, passing through. Sometimes happy, sometimes blue. Glad that I ran into you. Tell the people that you saw me passing through. Yankee, Russian, white or tan, a woman is a woman, and a man is a man, and a transgender transgendered person is a transgendered person, and a lesbian is a lesbian, and a straight is a straight, and a gay is a gay, and a bi is a bi, and a Republican is a Republican, and a Democrat is a Democrat. Human beings. And we're only passing through. Anyway, passing through.